Juanito, the man, the legend.
I know we talked to Kelazhur. Oh, he's about to get 2 Rex, by the way. We talked to Kelazhur last season, and not only did he mention that he was going full-time, which is really awesome, but that he, was talking about how this region seems to have everyone every which way, right? Like people in Italy, people in Korea, people in Mexico, people in Netherlands. Like, it's all over the place. But as far as I know, he's going to be playing with maybe a slight disadvantage, but, kind of as it scales poorly to the disadvantage he has just in general versus SpeCial, who seems to always just have the better. And now he's going to try and get momentum on his side, lickety split. He's going to 2-Rax Kelazhur and hope to find him mismicroing, because even though it is Romanticide, it's not too common still to see a 1-Rex expand.
Yeah, and I'm trying to recall from memory just the seriousness between them, and I don't think SpeCial does this very often, right? I don't think of him as the 2-Raxing player very often, so I think Kelazhur, rightly so, is just not going to be looking out for this. It's not going to be scouting at all. It's probably thinking that Romanticide is the type of map where he gets to play the longer games. And it's usually Kelazhur with the first punch, with the first aggression, right? Like he's usually the one that makes a few extra, maybe Reapers and Hellions and tries to break through. And then, we see SpeCial attempt at a defense usually successfully and then stabilizes and wins the game for the most part. I guess 9 times out of 10, quite... yeah, that's exactly right? Like 9 times out of 10, pretty much. So we'll see. We'll see with SpeCial on the aggression. Kelazhur will scout his own main base here, but SpeCial seems to be waiting for 3 Reapers. Kelazhur, he's kind of spotted.
He will, but now it's a bit awkward as his Reaper takes the first shot of damage. He needs to make sure to keep that alive. I would say the best way for this to snowball in SpeCial's favor is when the first Reaper isn't microed correctly and dies. But if the first Reaper is totally fine, gets protected by the SCVs, then things should be okay for Kelazhur as well, because your factory is still quite fast. You get the Hellion, you have another Reaper on the way. The second Reaper is slow. It's slower than if you had started a Marine, basically, but it does give you at least some more crowd control, which your opponent is going to have plenty of. But it looks like SpeCial's figured he's done as much damage as he possibly can, and pulls away from the Reaper production and goes into a CC faster than Kelazhur did.
Yeah, and Kelazhur made 1 extra Hellion, so I would love for him to identify that the barracks has been floated. I'm not sure if he saw the Marine, but I think he should just be crossing the map and seeing if there is an opening to delay that CC from SpeCial or do a little bit more damage, as most of the production for SpeCial has to be on his side of the map at the moment, and it definitely is. The factory not yet done for the side of the Mexicans, so I would love to see Kelazhur try to make something happen. That said, the bunker is now almost finished, and it doesn't look like the Brazilian's going to find much in retaliation.
I mean, he didn't really dedicate to one base build to try and just full-on retaliate. That would have been, I think, a bad idea anyways. Yeah, he's not going to have a whole lot of room to make his little Reaper Hellion squad work. The Barracks threatens to build a Marine just to be annoying. Does see that the army is still back at home too, so this is just a good control from SpeCial. Even if he really didn't get very much done, he does get the control of knowing where Kelazhur's army is, what type of army it is. Then he gets his command center on location, whereas Kelazhur plays it a bit safe, and SpeCial's even going to block out the command center furthermore with the barracks block.
Yeah,
that is surprisingly annoying, because I think SpeCial might even be willing to just let it die. So it's the full health has to be taken down.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. However, for Kelazhur, I mean, he saw the trajectory of this barracks, so I feel like he should have been attacking it with all of his units. Instead, he's wasted a little bit of time. That barracks could have taken a lot more damage already. And he can always try to prevent the landing of that barracks again. SpeCial is now too far from location, but it's coming back. And again, this is where you want to position units under that barracks so that he can't land. SpeCial doing it for him, however, so that's going to be enough for the time being. Will end up landing the barracks to be annoying. But yeah, not much HP to leverage there, so it looks like it will end up falling.
Yep, just, not letting it die as fast as possible and still getting that last second block. It's annoying. It's annoying. Kelazhur is going to be probably a little miffed that he when he realizes the command center special is already done and saturated the natural as well. Let's see if he gets a scout on the quick 4th gas here from SpeCial. Probably unlikely. You don't usually head towards the bottom left of the natural, maybe into the main, maybe on the right side, but that's actually where he heads this time around, so that's some good news. Might be suspicious of a mech play from SpeCial from here on out, whereas without it, he might just kind of temporarily forget. He is going to lose all of his units, and if he trades out with the Raven, that would have been worth it, but he doesn't.
Yeah, sadly. So instead, he wastes an extra scan, Kelazhur, that is. I like that he went in on the natural because he knows that the Reapers just jumped into his main. So he thinks, okay, there can't be that many more units. And he's kind of right about that. But unfortunately for him, the tank pops up at the right time. The Cyclone is already out and ready to help. And he doesn't find the damage that he was looking for. Kelazhur, that is now SpeCial with an already finished third CC. And the option to go into mech, like you were saying. I think that this is what Kelazhur should be anticipating, seeing as SpeCial was so willing to give up his barracks on the other side.
Willing to give up the second barracks, yeah, and there's the very fast fourth gas. It's just also something that SpeCial has been doing more reliably than any other Terran, that's for sure. But especially lately, it feels like you gotta expect 1, maybe even 2 mech games from SpeCial. So that puts Kelazhur in a tricky spot. I mean, he's going to go for 2 base priority, and I think maybe slap a third CC down behind a push. But either way, him trying to catch up with a third CC or doing this 2 base pressure, I don't have high hopes for this, Cats, if I'm being completely honest. It's not that I think anything has gone so catastrophically wrong that obviously Kelazhur can't do anything. I just personally don't think it's going to spike quick enough to punish SpeCial. By the time Kelazhur is ready with Stim and a decent army, I feel like SpeCial has already gotten enough tanks, good Viking patrol, all that good stuff to cover Romanicide, the best defensive map that there is.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. There is the Raven option for both players, SpeCial having 2 and Kelazhur the 1, but the 1 from Kelazhur does have a lot of energy, so maybe if the tanks are not all consolidated and he can get those disables quickly enough, maybe the bio can overpower. But yeah, we're looking at a tight deadline here for the Brazilian, and I want to see him move out with everything or nothing at all. And when I say nothing at all, I just want to see him move out with everything, actually. Like, if he doesn't move out with anything, he's just dying. So there we go. Unsieges all of the tanks, but 1. I guess that's okay. I would love for this one to be included as well, because, SpeCial is going to be a tough nut to crack. There we go.
So pushing out to the right, dropping to the left. I mean, that's a decent plan, but it looks like it's going to be scouted by the Liberator. Also scouts the Liberator, sure, but I think the priority is on the scout of the medevac. The Liberator is being scouted, now they just wait and chill. If they want to, if they actually even get sacrificed, I don't think it's nearly as important as the medevac's being scouted. SpeCial also trying to scout for any push off to the right side. I think he knows exactly what he would probably do to get back in the situation, right? So he's already predicting everything Kelazhur's throwing at him.
Yeah, and that location for the Liberator as well, extra annoying as it kills one of the SCVs, making the supply depot for sure. I thought that the both of them would actually fall. Not sure how they didn't. And here is the defensive, or the Matrix is actually to disable 2 of the tanks of SpeCial. Good focus firing from Kelazhur will get rid of the tank that was not disabled. However, that is a lot of auto turrets in range, and Kelazhur looks like he's getting cleaned up. However, 2 of these tanks are not sieged, and that will net one of them dead right away from Kelazhur, but the rest of the army of SpeCial is here to defend in a timely fashion, and it looks like the Mexican has deflected the Brazilian.
It was better than expected. Fortunately for Kelazhur, he got to unload the natural because the missile turret didn't quite cover, and there wasn't a second missile turret, I guess more importantly, to full stop the double medevac drop. And the tanks did get a bit, maybe a surprise attack there, a bit faster than SpeCial was expecting. Sure, it could have gone a lot worse, but it wasn't nearly enough to make up for all of Kelazhur's deficits. And now he's in a very painful position, I feel like, for Terran. He knows he's behind, he knows he didn't do enough damage, and he knows that he's facing a mech player who is specifically right now hitting his stride. This is where mech starts to get really powerful, is once they've taken away any mid-game attacks from the bio player, and they're just like, yep, late game we go, mech is better. So Kelazhur I think you can't go into any more bio plays. You still have to make a bit of bio, of course, but you can't just focus on it entirely. You're gonna have to try and win the Viking War in a super, super late game, which I don't think is going to work, but it's perhaps his best bet.
Yeah, and I mean, theoretically, a lot of the time you do want to split your army up against the mech player and try to kind of wear him thin, because there's a lot of anchoring units like tanks that you might catch off position that if they're consolidated, they're going to be super annoying. But in this particular case scenario, I think Kelazhur kind of played himself. I think that you could have just not overcomplicated things and hit with everything on one side. Imagine all of the Marines protecting those tanks from the auto turrets, for example, right? And that's the power of the Raven. I think that he has the option to disable so many of those tanks, and the fact that his tank production had been good enough that he had 5 or 6 tanks himself that I think if you just protect those and if you do a bigger punch in one single location, especially after the medevacs were revealed and your opponent's probably going to have to be split in 2 different locations to defend, then your chances of it working are much higher than what we saw. You know what I'm saying? Like, it felt like he almost catered to SpeCial being split.
Yeah, to a degree. I think when it comes down to is just hopefully finding SpeCial and not preparing for the right thing. So not being prepared for the split, or not being prepared for the all-in-one attack. And I do think the all-in-one attack, when we witnessed everything go down, would have worked better. But then maybe SpeCial he isn't attempting to split his army, right? So his Vikings, Ravens are there from the get-go. His tanks are sieged and aren't caught a little unsieged late, right? Yeah. But he was also expecting that second drop. So either way, Kelazhur was kind of hoping for SpeCial to mess up in some way. He did not, and even if he did, he would have to mess up a lot to actually lose this game, which he is going to win with this attack.
Yeah, it's looking hopeless for Kelazhur, who is lagging behind in supply. He's going to try to make something happen, but SpeCial even has the resources left to leave a couple of tanks behind, taxing a lot of the army of Kelazhur, who is running out of options as this force from SpeCial looks just unstoppable.
Yeah, and it's really difficult to force a base trade in this scenario when you just don't have that many units to threaten the main base with. And that's exactly what Kelazhur would have to be doing, by the way, is in the main base stopping production. And then we talk about a lot of what ifs, but he's not even doing that. There's already tanks popped out. He's already been deflected. Kelazhur knows that this game is over and is probably just figuring out how to not let this game happen again.
Yes, indeed. A rough game 1 for Kelazhur. He did scout the proxy Reapers, but SpeCial made it so that he didn't overcommit to the Reapers at all, right? Like, he just made the 3, even managed to give away one of his barracks and still came out on top as far as the economic game, which is kind of surprising. I feel like Kelazhur maybe could have done something on the counter offense, maybe rush to a medevac or something like that and be like, hey, I'm going to have more units because your production was on my side of the map or something. I don't know.
It's a tough game, very tough game. SpeCial kind of used the 2 racks opener as an excuse to get ahead in like other ways than just, oh, I killed too many SCVs and you can't recover. And then Kelazhur didn't have much to work with from that because he couldn't really stop SpeCial's natural from being put down. He couldn't really stop his 3rd CC from being planted as soon as possible. And by the time he could do something, it already felt like it was too late. So a very frustrating way to lose, and that's just a way that we see commonly people lose against mech specifically. I feel like mech not only wins because of all the reasons it can win, better late game army, better turtling, so on and so forth, it also has the extra mental win, in my opinion. I mean, I'm projecting a little bit because I really hate facing mech, but seriously, it feels like it's already out of your control before anything has already happened.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I certainly hope that's not the case for the bio players. Surely they can do something before.
If the game isn't going swimmingly for you already,
I see.
and you see like the mid game is supposed to be when you're really doing well, and you're like, oh, there isn't even a really strong mid game for me, then you got to look towards the late game, and then you're kind of still playing into a bit of the mech player's hands. So even if you're on even footing and you're getting to the late game, it still could be super frustrating. As I said, projecting a little bit, and I know that Kelazhur has taken on many mech players in dominant fashion. Like, he does know how to win against mech. Yeah. It's just that it is probably the most brutal spiral. It's the most brutal matchup that a lot of people can tell 6 minutes in advance they're going to lose in 6 minutes. It's just where I feel like where I'm coming from. Yeah, and Kelazhur probably saw that as well.
Yeah, I think where I connect with you there is also the fact that bio has to find the openings, right? Like, you have to outmaneuver the mech. So I think, I suppose in a scenario where the mech player is perfectly positioned and just has their army in the perfect locations, it's impossible to breach. I don't know that there is such a perfect positioning that's even possible, right? Like, you have to spread your army, like kind of like we saw SpeCial spread in 2 different places. And so I think that if Kelazhur had identified that, for example, last game, there was an opening. If he hits in one single location where he maybe breaches, where he maybe kills those tanks, his 5 or so tanks can actually contest for that position at the 3rd, and so on and so forth. But it's definitely on the bio player to find the openings, to carve the openings, and he was not able to do it. So yeah, it seemed definitely a little bit hopeless because you never want to fight mech head on, right? Like that's just not gonna go well.
Exactly. Let's get some intros before production yells at us. Bottom left on Blackburn, we have Kelazhur.
And in the bottom right-hand side, it is the Mexican SpeCial.
You know, if we do see mech again, I think we'll have a different type of starter, different type of opener, and we can start pointing out how Kelazhur can kind of control mech more than what we saw last game.
Yeah, this is a very good mech map too, right?
You know, I've heard people say that, or I guess a pro gamer or two has said that, but I've never really seen a lot of evidence for it. You know, I feel like Roddy's talked about how Raynor said that it's a good mech map, and then we proceed to see like no mech games on the map, maybe one or two, but just not a whole ton. In TVZ, of course, we'll talk about with Raynor. But for TVT, you'd also think so, because it's just a map that really forces you to butt heads more than it is about harassment and drops.
Yeah.
But I still don't think I see that much mech on it. But if we are going to see it, it's from SpeCial.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's just not that common in the matchup in general. But the map, the topology of it kind of lends itself to mech, right? Like that 3rd/4th base being as forward as it is kind of good for the type of unit that siege tanks are, because you can be defensive and offensive at the same time, at least in theory, right? Like you're sieging your tanks to defend, but you're also kind of expanding towards your opponent. And there's not a lot of room to outmaneuver, I feel like the expansions are kind of just streamlined and kind of easy to take one at a time. It's kind of difficult to breach into the map in that sense, to kind of find carving spaces. There's, the main is very obviously there's a large air gap, but it's so obvious, so apparent that it's kind of easy to defend with a few turrets. And yeah, I can see mech working. I would love to see SpeCial try it, but we'll see.
Yeah, as soon as we see what SpeCial's plan is, because I'm almost guaranteeing that Kelazhur does not go mech, but I guess it's always possible. Then we can talk a little bit more about it and its strengths. But right now, let's talk about the build that Kelazhur has chosen to do. I really like it, especially if it does end up going into a mech game. This is not going to be punished, I mean, it's a bit fortunate, I suppose. A bit of a gamble was always get a really fast 3rd CC, but the gamble has paid off from all I can see. SpeCial did not have any opener that was going to punish it or severely punish it. So SpeCial is going to be a command center behind for quite some time. And Kelazhur is not going to be, upset if SpeCial also gets to do his thing, because he's already gotten away with a lot more.
Very interesting indeed. Do you find that the location for the 3rd CC is just to avoid the scan? It's just to hide it?
Could be. I think it is also the safest place. It won't be attacked by the tank on the little slow zone here.
I see.
So a couple reasons for it. His Cyclone denies any vision and also any harassment. Super easy to just place that right there with the slow zone in there too. It's not like you can't boost over the Cyclone. Other maps, yeah, you could if you really thought it was worth it, but not in this one. So a SpeCial does load up a medevac. It shouldn't be to abuse the main base drop. It should be to try and push either the front or the slow zone area that I was talking about. But is it going to work? That is something that Kelazhur needs to figure out and then start preparing to defend. Because this is still going to be a complicated defense. It's just that time is on Kelazhur's side if this doesn't end up breaking him.
All right, let's see. The Reaper did spot the medevac coming, so the tanks will have been spotted. And Kelazhur is actually a little bit late to his own siege, so he will end up losing his add-on. He recognizes that and will not be putting the starport there anymore. The tank in a little bit of peril as the Liberator will siege for it. But Kelazhur, good heads-up play there. Repositions right away. The Cyclone forced a little bit closer to the front lines to have to say something about that medevac and that Liberator, and SpeCial is now looking to reposition and maybe siege this bunker instead.
And technically, he still doesn't know about the 3CC. He might be picking up on something with just the amount of units, but his scan also just saw that it was double gas in the natural, which is actually because Kelazhur is already ready to use it, but he might misinterpret it too. We'll see how it goes. Interference Matrix to try and save the tank. It doesn't save the first one, but the SCV repair We'll save the second. However, the SCVs in the main base.
Yeah, I'm looking at that
gosh.
number creep up and up. Now Kelazhur reacting, but SpeCial just positioning the Liberator will finally get answered by the Cyclone, but good heads-up play from SpeCial to kind of split his army in the, the furthest most directions that he could. Will get a gas for his troubles as well with his tank. One did get taken down, but Kelazhur losing 12 SCVs. So, yeah, I'm not sure. How do you feel about the economy now? I guess SpeCial is finishing his own third CC, so Kelazhur perhaps not in the worst position yet.
Yeah, I don't think it's the worst position for Kelazhur yet, but he even loses his Raven here. He really did just get, pushed from too many sides, I guess. Like, the only reason the Liberator didn't kill 20 SCVs is because SpeCial anticipated being taken down. So he over-microed it. Like, if it had just continued to be sieged, it would have gotten at least 4 more SCVs, if not more. Kelazhur just really focused, struggling to take care of the engagement as fast as he wanted to, because he was, in a way, dealing with it. He wasn't dying to it, that's for sure, but he was having trouble dislodging it, so he was really focused on that, and has completely lost track of the main base. Probably just assumed his Cyclone had taken care of it as well. Like, if that had not happened, then Kelazhur still has at least a 6-worker lead, right? And his 3cc build comes down at the same time that SpeCial's does. But instead, he found himself in a bit of a deficit, still is, not by too much, but he would have been in an okay position if that had not happened. And hopefully his Raven would have still been alive too, because he wouldn't be nearly as confuzzled. Yeah, that's certainly what it was there. It's just like you're trying to put your things back together after such a hectic set of happenings, and unfortunately for him, he's going to be on the losing end of that stick. He is still keeping up in supply, however, he is still keeping up in workers. A little bit behind, he is trailing, and it all comes down to this attack. If he can deflect it, then he will be in an okay position, but 2 Ravens on the side of SpeCial have me feeling a little bit worried for Kelazhur. He just loaded up Medivacs too. It's always awkward when you do that. You don't get to accomplish your plan. You don't get to send the Medivacs out, but then while they unload, it could get awkward. It's actually fully unloaded by the time they engage. Kelazhur getting a little too gung-ho, trying to jump on top of tanks that he thought were undefended, but not so, and he didn't have combat shields. It was 7 seconds away. That was a bit of a mistake there from Kelazhur, who once again is in a position where I don't think he has to straight up die to this, but just through miss-micro, he is being pushed into his own natural, and then that could lead to his death.
Yeah, SpeCial has been so methodical, so beautiful about his advances here as he continues to move on forward and push on forward, just 1 tank at a time disabled, and Kelazhur trying to bring everything here to try and clear this attack. He will be able to, but he will lose 14 workers for his troubles, putting him at 48 versus the 71 left over from SpeCial. So SpeCial will have to kind of run back, but he is in a very comfortable economic position. Now it's up to Kelazhur to try and equalize things in that department.
He does have a couple things going for him. 1, 30 army supply lead. 2, combat shields is done. SpeCial only recently started his. So this is the panic moment for SpeCial. He could even lose the game from right here if he doesn't play this perfectly. He knows it as well. Pre-pulling the SCVs, looking to engage before Kelazhur has actually situated himself. Is that going to be the right play? I don't know. It definitely doesn't work, at least off the bat.
He
doesn't have any firepower. And there you have it.
Beautiful counter offense there from Kelazhur, taking advantage of how short the map was. He had a lot more army than I actually thought. SpeCial with good preemptive defense there, pulling all of his SCVs, but it was just simply not enough. And what a turn of events. It seemed like everything was going in SpeCial's favor, right? It seemed like everything was going SpeCial's way. What happened there?
Well, he did lose a lot of army in that engagement, right? He thought the choke would probably work out better than it did to take out more Marines with Kelazhur, and he probably just hoped that his auto turrets would help buy the time for his tanks to kill all of Kelazhur's Marines. So at the end of the day, I guess, sum it up, he just thought that he would take a better engagement so that he could continue pressuring. If he knew that it was going to be a 40 supply deficit by the end of the engagement, he probably packs up just before Kelazhur is ready to go and says like, oh no, I'm backing off, like don't worry. But he was doing such good things when he was picking off the tanks, he was winning the air battle that he really wanted to push the issue, and Kelazhur was able to take a good enough engagement because he did have a lot of barracks production. He already used a lot of his earlier economy to invest into a decent number of Marines, and it was just the combat shields that he had to wait for.
was there any hiccups in terms of production for Special, you think? I mean, I think we're guessing at this point because we would have had to be laser focused on that. But there was only one tank I found on the way from the counterattack for Kelazhur. And of course, it is a very short rush distance map. But it felt like during the attack, maybe Special could have had 2, maybe even 3 tanks at that point.
I'm not sure. I would
difficult.
have to have been focusing on the production.
Yeah.
My assumption is that Special had later barracks production for sure, with the way that he opened, and the way that he also prioritized his Viking production. But yeah, I don't know about the tank count. Thing is, even if he had 3 tanks, that was not exactly the best position to even abuse tanks. Like, it is a bit of a choke with the slow zone in the middle, right? But usually your tanks are so far behind that they aren't quite abusing them while they're in the slow zone. So even with 3 tanks, you're talking about a pretty good concave from Kelazhur.
That's true.
Now, I think hindsight 2020 and all that, Special would not have known to do this when he was in the moment. But I think you look back on, you're like, oh, maybe I really should just live this my third and like given it up temporarily. But that would have been a whole other can of worms to talk about if he had done that.
Yeah, certainly. That's a very good point. Maybe he should have just expanded vertically instead from the beginning, knowing how much damage he was doing to start things off. But obviously, like, once you position your CC to take that base, it's very difficult to change your mind in that aspect. So unfortunate for Special, who had brilliant moments of micro, of confusion in that early game. I mean, the Liberator did fantastic for him. Even the timing of sieging the tanks and the Liberator kind of at the same time, things were looking great for him, does a lot of damage. But Kelazhur with the counter offense gets one on the board to get his 3rd win over the last 20-something maps, so that's good for him. Let's see if he can continue that up. As in the bottom left-hand side, it is the red Terran player from Mexico, and for Psystorm Gaming, Special.
In the top right, playing for Team Liquid, he is Kelazhur.
Some early gas.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. I saw his supply depot go down close to home, so believe it or not, the 2-second difference between the SCV being rallied to the front or just picking one of the mineral line and planting it next to you can be considerable in these, very, 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 very top tier players. Definitely not considerable for us, but and then especially if you have a plan with it, right? If you're just doing this because you're trying to optimize a build that doesn't really have a direction, you're just like all about optimization, but you don't really have a solid plan, that's also when it's useless. But if Special, I know he does, like, is thinking like, I need this really extra fast gas to get this extra fast factory or reactor or whatever his plan is, then that does help him a ton. The downside is he doesn't have a wall, so being scouted is a bit easier, or dealing with Hellion harassment now becomes a lot more difficult. But he probably is going to go for an equal number or greater number of Reaper Hellions than Kelazhur anyways, so that kind of negates the threat in the first place.
All right, I'm very curious to see if he's going to continue to mine that gas. For the time being, he's just left 2 per gas, so it was really about the factory timing, like you were mentioning, not so much about the follow-up, right? Like, that means we're not going to see him rush to something weird like a starport into battle cruisers or some weird stuff, right? Like, it's got to be just the Hellion. Or, I don't know, he's now saturating the gases again. Back to 3-3 before saturating the minerals. Does this tell you anything?
This is a very specific build. Unfortunately, I'm not that not good.
Yeah, it's a very odd one.
Good at analyzing TVT. It is, I was going to say, with how much gas he had accrued, it should definitely be a 1-base starport. It's just the added extra expense that could be going into, I don't know. I think it is just like the faster everything. And then maybe the Reaper Hellion harassment with even a Liberator to go for more damage. It's really caught Kelazhur off last time, right? But Kelazhur is doing a build that maybe Special isn't hoping to go up against. It's hard to tell, but he's going for reactored Reapers. So he doesn't have a lot to work with towards the very beginning of the game, but he didn't get punished for it. So now he has double reactor Reaper. That's a fair bit of production there.
Yeah, that's got to be good for his first defense, potentially. Especially it's going to make the Banshee transition. So he will end up going for Banshee. I would hope to see a Cloak as soon as he accrues the extra gas for it. He's already at 177, and no, he's actually instead going to start more add-ons. So no Cloak just yet. And with the factory finishing the tech lab, I imagine a tank. So just a Cloakless Banshee to try and apply some pressure here.
I'm really surprised by that, because he does definitely have some extra gas, but just waiting for the add-ons to finish, I guess. Yeah, you still can't even afford the cloak if you also want to afford tanks. Interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like he's, you know, even then, I'm like, you know, obviously going to trust Special here. I feel like he could have afforded the cloak. It's just not his choice, at least not for now. But Kelazhur, as I was talking about, doing a build that maybe Special wasn't hoping would be done. 6 Reapers and 3 Hellions about to hit him. Good microwave there from Kelazhur. He's only going to lose 1 Reaper as opposed to taking damage on literally everything. And of course finds a command center that's not done because it was built after a starport.
Oh, yeah, but here's the Banshee, and it's completely unopposed. There is nothing that shoots up in the army of Kelazhur, so the CC will be able to go down. The Banshee is revealed and will be forced to pull back, and Kelazhur will also spot the starport continuing production. And yeah, it was that Raven that he was going after, Special that is. So a very odd build, but it is very optimized. I mean, he started the Raven right as the Cloakless Banshee finished. So it's a build that I haven't seen before from Special, but it's a pretty cool one.
Yeah, being very optimized, definitely a good way to put it. The Banshee does kind of cover him against the earlier attacks, so I'm seeing how that works now. But even then, if Kelazhur really was just YOLO mode today and he dived right across the command center into the main, he might have got the tank unsieged and still been able to get into the mineral line. And with that many units, it's just, you know, the Banshee will eventually clean it up. Yeah, 100%, but that many units is always a bit scary. But he seems like everything came together to defend even that many Reapers, even that many Hellions, just in the nick of time. And Kelazhur now it's his turn to be a little sad, I suppose, as his units get increasingly worse over time. But the Raven gets better, the tanks get better, the Viking production definitely better. Kelazhur trying to at least do what he can with these little fodder units, I'll call them for now.
Yeah. This tank is going to help to anchor there, as the Raven is also on his side now available, so that's good for him. Trying to deny and trying to pounce on any siege of this tank, but the second tank will siege first to cover for the first one to kind of get in position and potentially siege up that production. So Special now unsieging the second tank will bring both tanks forward. Kelazhur not quite in position with his next tank to protect that barracks, so the barracks will get sieged no matter what here. And yeah, the game will continue to unfold. A very peculiar, very interesting game as Kelazhur is now getting his Raven threatened and potentially killed. I feel like he could have committed for that. I'm not sure, though.
Maybe he could have, yeah. Maybe. Tank's going to re-siege, take advantage of this interference matrix. The barracks does get successfully taken down, so less production for Kelazhur to work with. Not only that, but the way that Special is able to abuse this forward front, the starport can't even go to that reactor, which we'll talk about in a second because we have the SCD pull. Kelazhur realizing that it's best to nip this in the bud before it gets too far gone, but even that attempt might not be successful enough. Either way, he loses this game by the looks of things. Either he waits too long and it gets even better set up, or he tries to break it now and is unsuccessful. GG.
Yeah, an unfortunate opening from Kelazhur. And yeah, I'm with you. If he had just ignored the CC on the low ground and went for the tank, but that's like almost an impossible ask, right? You see SBC that's not done. Finishing, you have to pounce on it. I mean, anyone's mouth is just foaming. I guess foaming is more like rabies, so I guess it would be more like you're salivating for it, right? Like you see the CC and you're like, oh my god, like let's get that. But unfortunately for him, there was a Banshee, and that puts a stop to his plans. A very cool build order from Special will net him a 2-1 in this series that shall continue after a quick break.
Welcome back, everyone. SpeCial now leads the score 2-1 against Kelazhur and is looking pretty dominant in a lot of these games. One slip up on Blackburn where he may be over-dedicated, and Kelazhur is able to get the counterattack, but otherwise making very good use of tanks, Vikings, and Ravens. His control, as usual, pretty immaculate.
Yeah, beautiful from SpeCial. We'll see if Kelazhur can bounce back. Drooling is the word that I was looking for. Thank you for the help during the break there. As salivating in excess, I guess, is drooling, right?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Very, very cool. But we are now loaded on Oxide. It's a very interesting TVT map. It's one of the more tactical maps, I think, as far as tank positioning and whatnot. And I feel like that plays to the strengths of SpeCial in the map or in the matchup more so than Kelazhur. So we'll see what the Brazilian can do. But here is the Mexican, who has been unstoppable in this matchup against this opponent for a while. It is SpeCial.
In the top right is the blue Terran for Team Liquid. He is Kelazhur. You know, the last game really was, the more I think about it, the cooler it is. It's always fun to watch games and kind of like learn as it unfolds. 'Cause a lot of time we do see a lot of the typical builds. We kind of know what direction it's supposed to be headed, but then when you try to you watch it and you're like, hold on here, what's going on? And then you figure it out.
It's cool, yeah.
At the end of it, you're always like, oh, I wish I could have communicated that to the audience, and sounded like a real pro. On the other hand, it's just like, it's awesome learning with you guys. And I feel like that was what happened with SpeCial's build. The fact that I said it, and yet I didn't really believe it myself. It was like, he didn't expect this build? Like, what's going on here? Because Beckett is pretty popular for a build such as what Kelazhur threw at him, right? Like a lot of Reapers and a lot of Hellions. So I was like, I guess he didn't expect it. But in my mind, I was thinking, there's no way, right? You expect like a certain number of early game units. And the tank timing and Banshee timing to pop out to deflect that, I mean, yeah, it just makes it, in my mind, seem more of an even anti-Beckett build or anti-Kelazhur build, either way. At the end of it, I was quite impressed. I was like, I get it now. And then, of course, the eventual push on such a brutal map like Beckett, where you can siege up the production of the barracks and the reactor specifically, just kind of it means you can't ever get to reactored Vikings, or if you do, it takes a very long time because you have to build another reactor. So it just is like this nice little approach to the start, and then kind of has a brutal attack in the middle. And we saw Kelazhur, like many people, I'm sure, struggle against the hold. And I talked a lot about the last game, a little bit about this one, just a couple of regular overwooders, or more so regular. SpeCial trying to out-micro Kelazhur. Didn't really work out there, loses the SCV, and that's about it.
Yes, indeed. And that was an awesome build. It's always cool to see new stuff. At least to me, I haven't seen something like that before. The timings worked out great for SpeCial. And I think the highlight was the Banshee, right? Like, what a cool Banshee on a map like Beckett. And especially not even just about Kelazhur, but it's maybe a development in the meta. We've seen a lot of Reaper Hellion pokes, and the Banshee seems to account for that rather well. But in particular, on Beckett, the counterattack of the Banshee is always a potential option. So very, very cool to see it used as it was, and to see the Raven follow up as it did. And I think that analysis is usually done post-mortem in a sense, right? Like, you're usually analyzing what happened rather than knowing what's going to happen based on you've seen it all. So like, no one has seen it all, and that is always a good sign, if nothing else, that the game is still shifting and that we're still learning. That's good.
Yeah, I think SpeCial is definitely a player who's been pushing that too. Like, he's always willing to change and adapt and figure out ways to, subvert expectations, to take advantage of the expected. Like, I think he's the one that's trying to push that. It doesn't always work out. Sometimes the tried and true way is the best way. But SpeCial seems to be even on a mission to prove that some of these unorthodox plays could be not a standard necessarily, but could be a standard of a best of. Like, he'll throw these in because he knows that you're going to do, the Reaper build or the Medevac build or what have you. Because, for instance, on Oxide, SpeCial could have predicted Kelazhur to go for a Medevac tank build or a Medevac Cyclone build for early game harassment. Because Kelazhur, I feel like he's a bit like Clem, where he does, he loves to micro and he loves to be in control. And TVT kind of having to play out the way that it doesn't necessarily always go the way he wants, especially not right now, because he's got the Cyclone taken care of.
Yeah, and we've seen that mine also be a presence for Special, right? And that is, all to your point, kind of fantastic against the likes of Kelazhur, who is going to be looking for those openings and will get taxed by mines and the likes, right? Like if it's a player that's just sitting back, the mine is a dead investment, right? Against a player like maybe Hero Marine or someone that's looking to develop his economy a little bit faster, to drop his CC faster than you, and to hit a timing later on, that mine doesn't do much. But against Kelazhur, it seems to find value every single time, because it is usually Kelazhur with the first attack or the first few bunch of units on the other side of the map.
Yeah, it's very least that you're going to be using everything aggressively. In a certain sense, a lot of Terrans would, but I think especially Kelazhur wants to take control, wants to draw off his micro. Didn't really work there, as Kelazhur had a similar, or Special had a similar set of units plus the Widow Mine. And now Special is going to use a little bit of momentum to go for an attack. I mean, his Banshee got cleared up, which I think he would love to be using right now to distract one unit or another, or be getting a couple of free kills, but he is still going to try and poke with this and see if he can continue to
good angle
out-control, basically. His tank Viking Raven, I feel like, has overall just been better than Kelazhur.
Yeah, and I mean, it's difficult to just point out to all the beautiful things that Special does, but look at that, right? Like right now we had Kelazhur kind of covering, or thinking that he's covering tanks with each other, putting them right next to each other, but Special still spots the setup and finds an angle where he can still take down one tank without engaging the other one with one of those Ravens. So that is just, Special is just such a good positional player, and he's really gotten to display that against Kelazhur, who is trying to sneak out and try to win with guerrilla tactics, which is what he's best at. So I'm not gonna count him out of this game yet. This medevacs could be dangerous.
You get a slightly faster second barracks invested into those medevacs, and he has a chance to use them very effectively. This is not at all what Special was expecting. He's even routing across the map.
Does Special even see this? I don't think that he did.
No.
And now Kelazhur is gonna spot that he is completely uncontested. The Liberators are gonna turn around, but what do you do with those Liberators against Bio? I mean, cover the production. That's a beautiful move, actually, for Special. You can't get any closer than that, but unfortunately for him, the Liberators are just gonna be completely ignored and outmaneuvered for the time being. So this drop from Kelazhur paying off, and Special actually having to pull back his entire army. This is working out great for the Brazilian.
It really is the difference of Special seeing medevacs or not at any point in this game. Had he seen them on the other side of the map, he knows to anticipate a drop and probably has less units rattling across, or might even just pull back sooner, thinking that this is the most important thing here. But he does pull back eventually. He's lost 6 SCVs, but by the looks of things, he's going to clean up both drops. And with that in mind, it still puts the damage in question. Did Kelazhur really do enough? I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
His third CC is only just finishing as an orbital.
Maybe that's good enough. He has kept up in workers. He's a few workers ahead. And usually when you see your opponent pulling back from the other side of the map, it's usually a pretty big victory for you. That wasn't a super huge commitment in the medevac, so it was definitely good for Kelazhur. The problem is he was already trailing, right? So that's where we're doing the kind of scrappy math to try to figure out if it was enough, because Special had an advantage already. But I do love how mature Special was about it in retreating, because Kelazhur was very well set up in his natural, and if Special doesn't retreat and pushes up the natural, then he's all in, right? Similarly to what we saw in the earlier matchups in the European region, where I think it was Vanya versus Lambo that was completely over and over. He was kind of setting himself up for Lambo to be all in because of the counter poke. So a very mature decision from Special to kind of drag the game out. And yeah, it's kind of worked out well for him. The game will just stabilize.
I do think the best thing out of Kelazhur's drop is that it messed up Special. Like, it obviously messed him up in a very direct way, which is that it killed some of his SCVs. But he got supply blocked once right after, and he just got supply blocked again. He's still pretty supply blocked, honestly. And he, of course, had to cancel his barracks. So the money that had already been invested into the barracks then got invested into other things. So then he only just recently adds on his barracks, which don't have, it's a bit of that snowball effect. And while some of these things are definitely just mechanical mistakes, which are more likely to happen when things are going awry, some of them are just, natural causes out of dealing with the drop in such a lopsided fashion. So I do think those are definitely some things we have to consider, not just the numbers on the screen, because there's also the fact that SpeCial got a later +1 armor. You know, there's been a tiny slip-ups every which way we look for SpeCial. That means that his 20 supply lead here isn't really the whole situation.
Yeah, and where there's chaos found on the side of SpeCial just by all of this happening, there's order found on the side of Kelazhur. So he actually had the time and presence of mind, thanks to all of this, thanks to having the map control, to kind of have and split his Vikings 2 and 2. So this time around, he catches both of the Liberators coming in, and the Liberators do nothing at all. They both get taken down. So beautiful job from Kelazhur, who is that's usually the kind of move that you expect from SpeCial, to where he's a little bit less chaotic, more organized, more in his approach, where he has the units in place and stuff like that. This time around, that is an advantage that goes on the side of Kelazhur. So let's see if he's able to do something on the other side of the map. But even if he doesn't do anything, he's taking his port behind this.
Taking a faster fourth and getting much faster to 2-2 upgrades. SpeCial is only just finishing his armor. He still has to wait on +1 armor to finish too. And those upgrades are obviously very important. I don't think we have to tell you guys for the millionth time how much the Marines benefit from this. And it does always, of course, matter. But turtling in TVT, it's absolutely a thing. You can get maxed out as well. And if your tanks are better sieged up, if you got a better concave, those things can overcome the upgrade deficit, or I guess more obviously, an anti-arm missile could definitely overcome the deficit, which SpeCial's got plenty of. He still has both Ravens alive with full energy.
Yeah, and he is maxed out, so this is a very scary prospect for Kelazhur, who does have a lot of tanks himself, but he's gonna have to be very careful. SpeCial with full energy on those Ravens is definitely gonna be deadly. We have seen him take advantage of the smallest openings that Kelazhur has given him, so Kelazhur has always to have a lot of tanks pre-positioned there so that they can't all be disabled at once. And he's doing a great job of that so far.
2-2 is about to finish for Kelazhur, but he is again getting bullied by the Vikings.
Ravens, both of them go down though in that engagement.
That's
so a very nice skirmisher from Kelazhur. They're taking those very key pieces. And now he's gonna feel pretty good with his tanks. A huge anti-armor missile actually lands, and Kelazhur will be prompted to engage onto SpeCial, but a little bit deceitful actually. The anti-armor mostly on Vikings at that point.
Yeah, and he had already taken a couple of scuffles that maybe stimmed his army once more than necessary, or just injured them over the course of time because his medevacs were too busy flying, not healing. And he didn't have as many medevacs just at the end of the day. Yeah. So he wasn't truly prepared to take advantage of that situation. He still should find some solace in the fact that he got what he mostly wanted from that, which were the double Ravens. He definitely meant to target them and get those. He even finds 3 tanks that are going to be a good trade for the Marines that he loses. Could find a 4th up on this high ground, but actually it's all about the 4th base. Kelazhur is going to be coming from behind, so he does find that tank, and now he even has a bit of a surround.
Yeah, but he's gonna have to exploit it. He's gonna have to trade effectively here. It's not gonna be easy. SpeCial will be cut off. As far as reinforcements are concerned, there is a Raven in play for Kelazhur. Can he get disabled on the tanks? No. Good focus fire from SpeCial. However, all of the tanks will siege, and Kelazhur will get a comfortable cleanup, it looks like. Though the supply says otherwise. The supply says, hey, this was all even. This was all fine.
It was only a portion of SpeCial's army, right? It had been on the front lines for so long that we're talking about a lot of time for reinforcements to be building it back at home. So that's why the supplies are a bit more even. Kelazhur also did not go for the sandwich like I was expecting him to. Either didn't think he needed it, or just didn't have those Marines specifically hotkeyed. So it could have been maybe even a bit better. Maybe he would have had a supply lead, but now it is just completely even. Upgrades have also started to maybe close a little bit. +3 definitely in favor of Kelazhur, but SpeCial might be able to catch up on 3-3 in its entirety. If Kelazhur isn't thinking about armor, which apparently he's not, he's also using a lot of his resources into other things, like additional starports and command centers, which definitely a good call, all mean that he might be forgetting +3 armor.
Yeah, that is very true. I mean, production is going to be essential for any tech swaps and just moving further into the game. Kelazhur now with a very good siege line on the top of that ramp, and without the Ravens to disable them, it's going to be very difficult for SpeCial to dislodge. However, if those siege tanks are left unattended, and as I say that there's 2 more Ravens, then medevacs could still be a big threat there, loading some Marines into medevacs, and SpeCial having had air control the entire game with very few units, mind you. Could definitely take advantage of that. So Kelazhur still has to be vigilant, maybe leave some Marines on top of those tanks. And yeah, it seems like both players are just kind of chilling on their side.
Both of them, remember, +3 armor around the same time, or
Nice.
and/or can afford it around the same time. As SpeCial has been very tight in his resources. He is going to try and settle the center, but it really doesn't go his way. All the Ravens get taken down. A lot of the tanks. Kelazhur kind of slapping him back for the attempt.
Yeah. Very nice move there from Kelazhur, consolidating his army on one side, leaving the other 4 tanks completely open, but SpeCial not really taking advantage of that. I think that that SpeCial is the type of player to have the presence of mind to kind of load up a medevac and kill those tanks in retaliation, but he hasn't thought of it. Like, he knows those tanks are there, but he's preoccupied on other things right now.
There's a lot of things to think about in this stage of TVT, especially with the way the map can play out. The 4 tanks, maybe a little too vulnerable, do get pounced on. SpeCial's going to take control. Oh, not quite, not quite. He's not going to take control of this plateau, which means they both have, I guess, one section of the map to each of them. Kelazhur was a bit later to the Raven transition, but then he was able to cut SpeCial's Raven count down a bit, so it seems like that's a bit even there. And overall, as far as bases go, as upgrades go, it seems like everything will even out.
Yeah, a very cool game here. Very, very cool. I'm hoping to see Kelazhur take us to a game 5. Now Liberators on the side of SpeCial, recognizing that he has had that air superiority for the majority of the game, will start to try and take advantage of that. And the Liberators are going to be super annoying, dislodging these tanks whenever they want. Unless Kelazhur manages to start kind of contesting for that air superiority. He has the bigger production for the time being, 3 Vikings at a time. So this will not be a recurring issue as the game progresses, but for now it is.
Trying to take out the Liberators. Decent micro there. Kelazhur is investing into +3 vehicle weapons, by the way. Something we haven't really pointed out is that he's had a substantial upgrade lead when it came to tanks, which, I mean, they are important because it affects the splash damage as well. So we're talking about a lot of extra damage, but I don't think it's necessarily worth perhaps the later transfer over into air. A couple interference which just go down, met by auto turrets from SpeCial as he also gets an anti-armor missile. The engagement's truly happening right now. Turns out going to win, but actually SpeCial comes in with more reinforcements and gets a much better concave towards the end. So it does look like it goes okay for SpeCial, but the supplies tell a bit of a different tale. He is significantly down in supply.
Yeah, definitely goes in with a lot of units there, but the 4 tanks in the back actually do wonders for Kelazhur in shattering all of the reinforcements of SpeCial. And unfortunately for SpeCial, only 1 Marine left to drop on top of those 4 tanks. Had that been a full medevac, I think he clears those 4 tanks and maybe takes advantage and positioning here over Kelazhur. But as it stands, the Brazilian with yet a little bit more to work with, as he is taking an extra base now in the top left-hand side of the map. And things are looking pretty good for him, I think.
SpeCial is going to bother dedicating to probably at least +2 vehicle weapons, and then might move on to ship if we get that far into this game, which I think is likely. I don't think SpeCial is going to be taken down anytime soon, because it is just so hard to break a Terran who's kind of on a lot of even footing, like technology-wise, and still has a high tank count, right? So you are going to have a much longer game. But Kelazhur is making a decision here with the additional production that is a bit interesting. So he's going up to 11 barracks in total versus SpeCial, who's just been on 5 this entire time. He's never added more past the 3 bases.
Oh, he's going! And Dorito cannons on everything on either side, actually. Concave, I'm not sure who it favors. And Kelazhur with 2 interference metrics on the tanks on the back, but that's not enough to propel him forward to take this engagement further. And so, yeah, things get interesting. Kelazhur started Liberator production, but that's an issue because SpeCial has started to produce 4 Vikings at a time. So if these Liberators show their faces, at least on the front lines, they will get taken down pretty fast.
Oh, some of these engagements are getting a little scary for SpeCial. I'm sure he's also hoping next time it would go a little bit better. And try and take down some tanks and some auto turrets, always clever. But back to the production thing, just to finish my point, like 11 barracks of production versus 5 means that the Marine Remax is obviously going to be a lot faster. It also is going to put a priority on Marine Remax as opposed to trying to win the battle in the air, which is typically the better army. Is once you have the air dominance, you are the better army, but is also the army that can't get the concave, can't get the surrounds. Concave does go to Kelazhur, and the anti-missile as well. The tanks get sieged up, and Kelazhur is once again going to take the fight in the middle, and that is the breaking point. GG.
All right.
Wow.
All right. Yeah, very, very cool. And the game looks so close but it's always throughout that game, Kelazhur taking little advantages here and there, and he transitioned most of that, like you were pointing out in those final moments, into production, right? So he had more starports, he had his CCs situated a little bit earlier, he had the extra barracks, and so he could afford to take these engagements kind of like a Zerg might. And if they both get reset, he knows he's going to get faster to that remax, even if they're working with similar tools as far as the economy is concerned. So great job from Kelazhur exploiting that fact. I mean, moving into siege lines is always such a difficult task for, I think, anyone. Is just terrifying. So knowing that he could take those engagements and kind of like trade evenly or come out ahead, great job.
It was still surprising to see SpeCial eventually buckle under that type of pressure. Like, it was the same point of contest that eventually SpeCial lost not once, not twice, but 3 times basically in the third and final one was the nail in the coffin. Because SpeCial maybe could have given up that location and just tried to get, again, as I was saying, maybe the better army in total, as long as it's also maxed, right? But instead he kind of was like, I think I can continue holding this little location. And at the end of the day, he was wrong, but you can see how I would think that is true. I also got to say that there was a couple of tanks that weren't really all firing right. The arc was almost too big for SpeCial, and Kelazhur might have also recognized that there was a central point that was a bit weaker. But he did have just the bigger army, the more army to work with, to get the concaves, to pounce on everything. And it seemed like he was dictating the pace as well, so that his spells and tank positioning came on a little bit faster than SpeCial's reaction, basically, as SpeCial was doing, whatever else he needed to do back at home. So not the type of game that I would give to Kelazhur. Exactly. If you asked me how did Kelazhur win against SpeCial, I wouldn't have said super late game, tightly contested middle point. I would have been like, oh, Reaper's got a benefit, and then he was able to close it out. But That's the game he won. So definitely kudos to Kelazhur. Perhaps going full time again is really what he needed to finally take down SpeCial.
Yeah, and could this give him confidence as well, right? We were talking about, like, what's the win condition for Kelazhur being better than SpeCial? I haven't seen it before. Like, even the game that he won prior, it felt like a little bit of a stroke of luck, but that last game, it looked like it. It looked like he actually outplayed SpeCial. And to all of your points, you tell me, what map is Kelazhur gonna win against SpeCial? Probably not Oxide, right? Like, probably not the most positional map out of all of them. So that gives me a great deal of promise for this final game, to see who advances on to, I believe, the finals. It is from Brazil and Team Liquid. Cara, it's Kelazhur. O mais grande do mundo.
In the bottom right, as the Red Terran, it is Psystorm Gaming SpeCial. I don't speak any of the languages that are here today.
But you were born on Cinco de Mayo, so it counts.
Yeah. Exactly. So somehow, some way it counts.
Cinco de Mayo.
This feels like when I cast an Australian tournament and I was like, I'm an adopted Australian. Don't even worry about it. Just give me it. Anywho, not that I would try to attempt to speak French or Korean if I was given the chance, though, because I'm definitely not fluent. So you just continue showing off, cats.
I mean, I know very little Portuguese, but I know the key words to get the Portuguese audience going,
The most important,
that's
right?
The trick. Yeah, that's the way to do it. But yeah, I'm so excited for this series and this game now. I mean, like, really, Kelazhur beating SpeCial at his own game is something that I did not expect to see today. And it gives me a great deal of promise, not just for this series, but, the next many series between these two, because we've seen so many and they've ultimately been very one-sided for the last couple of years. There was a point in time where Kelazhur was on the rise and was reaching the heights of SpeCial and started trading with SpeCial, and a couple of times many years ago where he beat him a few times in a row, and it was like, oh damn, that's exciting. But for the last couple of years, it's been all SpeCial, perhaps until today, Jess.
Perhaps. Kelazhur has been full-time in previous years and still struggled against SpeCial, but those were also the years that, he was able to get a couple of victories or really make it really close. And even though he had reached the upwards of 7K MMR on Europe during his time as a semi-pro, it still felt like something was missing to make him super consistent, to make him super reliable, to win any matchup, but especially TVT versus SpeCial. But now, times could be a-changing. Kelazhur definitely seems a lot more comfortable in a lot of the more basic forms of TVT, as in positioning and transitioning. I still think he is mostly losing out on the Raven Viking tank wars of the early to mid game, though, right? I think that is still a fact, but he obviously was able to adapt to it once he had enough Marines to work with, basically, and also play a little bit of Ravens too last game, because he did get a lot of better Raven usage towards the last couple of minutes.
Yeah, this is more of the Kelazhur that we were expecting. I think this is kind of the move out that I usually looked for Kelazhur to do, where he has a few more units. He's gonna move out. He's gonna try to apply that pressure, but SpeCial, he has that nasty mine yet again, and it has been a thorn on the side of Kelazhur. Kelazhur, I think, will not spot. Actually, does spot it this time around, so will be made aware of that mine. Looks like he'll use a Hellion and not a Reaper to take it down. I'm not sure how to feel about that, to be honest, but I imagine that was, yeah, definitely what he intended to do. So an interesting choice, and now he's gonna look to move forward.
Maybe because the Hellion was reinforcing?
Maybe.
It could be, because that's exactly what it was. Unfortunately, it doesn't pull back the 2 weakened Reapers, so the micro not going 100% in favor of Kelazhur, which it really had to do in order to win this fight, because the Marines' consistency just usually, a little more dependable. At the end of the day, he does have his, decent amount of Reapers left alive, because he at least didn't sacrifice one in the Widow Mine, and that is what snowballs, I think, even more so than the Hellions do, especially because they can jump into the main base, but right into the tank, right into the Marines. So much for that. These Reapers are now goners, but at least they'll grab 3 SCVs before they say goodbye.
Yeah, and that is something, but that is one of those clicks that you live in that second for a little bit too long, especially if it's a game as important as this one for both of these players, right? Like, you already clicked and it's like, I regret this immediately, but the animation will take a little bit longer before I can turn around, because the Reaper's gotta hop, and hop they do. At least he will be paying attention to this Liberator, and so it will only get 1 SCV and the mineral line evacuated as well, which is not nothing.
Really like this from SpeCial, keeping the Liberator in the dead zone, or even going back into the main. I feel like, it could have absolutely backfired, but he might have been thinking that Kelazhur's Cyclone is somewhere sharking around for it on the right side, because that's exactly what it was doing.
Yeah.
So, good read there from SpeCial.
Very, very well done. Now the Cyclone repositions to the main, but the Liberator's going elsewhere. So this dance is the dance that SpeCial has been winning throughout the series. I mean, these early game skirmishes have really been going his way. Good spotting Marine from Kelazhur, however, will net him a good position for the tanks. I think that with the Liberator, however, he's going to be able to SpeCial, that is, siege the mineral line of Kelazhur. And this is getting a little bit annoying, but the Raven at least is present, as well as the Cyclone, trying not to get in range of those tanks, and it does. So the tank is now exposed as well. Takes a couple of volleys worth of damage, but also displaces the units of Kelazhur, who is not mining efficiently through all of this.
Yeah, not mining efficiently at all. So even though he has a bit of a worker lead, it's not really true.
Come on, no.
The tail and the tanks are not being on siege. The Marines are not being controlled. SpeCial just hammering home that he is the better early game player with these units. Kelazhur is great with micro. I don't think we ever just really disagree with that, but it hasn't really been highlighted in these tank wars, these tank Viking Raven wars. He's always been caught at a little bit of a deficit as well. When he goes double Raven, his opponent does some tricky push that hits when the Ravens aren't nearly as useful as they could be. I mean, and he's just not microing as fast as maybe he should. Another tank gets taken down as he finally takes care of the Liberator. It doesn't get the last shot on that last tank, but one more tank, that's it. Kelazhur's not going to hold with that.
He's just not. It's a very sad way to end the series here, but it's looking like the end indeed. And I am completely with you. It wasn't a flashy micro from SpeCial, it was just positioning with these early units. Just a master class overall throughout the entire series. The Mexican will retain his serious lead and extend it into the future, but this was one of the better fights that Kelazhur has put up in recent history, and I think if he tightens his game just a little bit in these early portions, then he has shown that come late game, come army control and army and larger decisions